my friend brought me his old 240D and asked me to do a pre-trip inspection on the car. He's getting ready for a 4,000-mile trip to California back, and he wants me to see if there's anything that could be wrong with the car before he leaves. This car is unique. Number one, it's a 1977 model 240D, one of the first ones imported in the United States. There's a few things about the car that I really like. Number one, it has manual hand crank windows. Number two, it has manual sunroof. Number three, it has manual climate control. And finally, it has a 300D engine. This conversion I did on the car approximately 10 years ago, and it's made a great vehicle. You get all the simplicity that's tied into the systems on a 240D, plus you get the extra power of a 300D engine. Follow along as I take you through some of the things I look at when I do a pre-trip inspection. Even though I'm going to be doing a pre-trip inspection on an old diesel, the principles I'm going to cover in this video apply to almost any old car. I'm going to start with the engine, and I'm going to start inspecting areas that will prevent any type of catastrophic engine failure. And they come down to three things: fluids, fluids, fluids. That means I have to look closely at the potential for any leaks in the engine, transmission, rear end, brakes, and engine accessories. Let's take a close look at this engine to see if it's showing any signs of leaks. When you start your inspection, be sure and have a good light handy. I'm going to begin with the radiator. I'm going to check at the core on both sides to see if there's any signs of leakage. These will show up with wetness along the fins. That looks okay. Move on to the radiator cap. Check the seal. Condition of the cap itself looks okay. Then I'll inspect the radiator hoses themselves. Look for signs of chafing or any type of cracking. Make sure the hose clamps are tight. These hoses look like they've been recently replaced, so they're fine. While I'm here, I'll look down inside at the water pump area to see if I can see any wetness. That's the first sign that the water pump could be going bad. That looks pretty good around the radiator here. Moving on to the fuel system, I'm going to start at the injection pump by inspecting the lines and hoses leading into the pump. You have a hard line coming from the fuel tank and a flexible rubber hose that goes from that to the lift pump. Check the hose for condition and clamps for tightness. I'm making a mental note here that the pre-filter is pretty dirty and I'm going to have to change that. While you're at the lift pump, check the hand primer pump to make sure that's not leaking. And from there, closely inspect these plastic hard lines. They are prone to breaking, and when they do, it can be very troublesome. You can literally dump all your fuel on the road and the engine will quit. I'm looking at this one here, and sure enough, I can see a beginning of a crack. This hard line is going to have to be replaced. Then I'm going to check all the rubber return lines here coming from the injectors. If any of these hoses show any signs of wetness, they should be replaced. And finally, I'm looking at the top of the filter here and look at the fuel. Somewhere around this filter there's a leak. I suspect it's probably in the seals on this center through bolt. And I'm going to have to inspect that more closely a little later. I'm not done with the fuel system yet. I'm going to have to put the car up in the air and make sure I check the fuel hoses at the fuel tank itself. Next on my checklist is the power steering pump and hoses. Looking down here at this pump return hose, you can see the wetness in the hose itself. For some reason, this hose is a very common failure item, and it always begins by showing wetness of leaking right through a hose itself. So I'm going to have to replace this low pressure hose. The high pressure hose is clean and I don't see any cracks, but look right here. I'm getting signs of wetness coming out of the pump itself. So I'm going to have to investigate that a little further. We're not even out of the engine compartment yet, and I'm already developing quite a list here. One more thing on fluids that I should talk about, and that's brake fluid. This is something that gets neglected more than any other fluid on the car. The fluid should be changed every 2 years. If you look here, we're down a little bit on the fluid level, and that's going to make me a little suspicious when I go to check the brakes to make sure I have no leaking calipers. Another place that brake fluid can be leaking is right into the booster. So if there's any chance there's fluid leaking in there, I'm going to have to remove the master cylinder and get in there and check that brake booster out. And before we leave the engine, a couple other things. I'm going to pull that air cleaner housing cover and inspect the air filter. And also, I think we'll go ahead and replace this oil cap seal. You can see the indentation. That seal looks pretty old, and this is a very common leak item. When it comes to catastrophic engine failure on these old diesels, there are two things that I have left till last, primarily because I really want to stress them. Number one is the upper radiator neck. This is very prone to failure. You can dump all your coolant and ruin your engine in a very short period of time. If you have the old radiator with the plastic neck, you want to make sure that there's no evidence that that is starting to crack or loosen up. We actually carry a kit that allows you to go in there and put a metal reinforcement inside this neck on these old radiators. And number two are the oil cooler lines. In fact, one of my 300 SDs had a catastrophic failure on a way to the paint shop when the driver lost all the oil. And it was due to the power steering belt cutting into the oil cooler line, and probably in less than 2 minutes, the entire level of oil out of the engine was on the road. So get in there with a good light and check your oil cooler line fittings back here at the oil filter housing. Move down along to the rubber hose connectors. Look for any signs of wetness and also for any chafing in the area around the power steering pump. With my engine leak inspection out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and move on to mechanical items. I'll begin over here by looking underneath the air cleaner housing, inspecting the motor mounts, and also taking a good look at the exhaust manifold and exhaust downpipe for any evidence of leaks. Any exhaust leaks will show up as black stains on the manifold or pipe. From there, I'm going to go ahead and check my air cleaner mounts. There's 3 rubber mounts that hold this air cleaner in place. If they break, you'll feel looseness in the housing. Look at the V-belts here. I can rotate those sideways and check for cracks. These look okay. And I'm also going to check some of the bearings for any type of play. And then move on to the fan clutch. The fan clutch will have a slight amount of play in it, but it should be smooth and have a certain amount of fluid resistance inside the clutch itself. I do see a problem here. I'm not even sure if Larry's cruise control is working properly, but you can see this snap is broken on this connector here, and the adjustment screw is also broken, so this will have to be addressed. My engine inspection is almost complete, except for a couple things, especially if you have a 123 chassis. Be sure and check your water drains right here. And I always lube the hood hinges, especially down at this low point that tends to rust. And also check the battery tray. And sure enough, this one does not look happy. We're going to have to get in there, remove that battery tray, and repair that entire rusty area with Miracle Paint. Now it's time to get the car up in the air and inspect the suspension and final drive. Sorry for you guys that don't have a lift. I know you're going to have to do this with jacks and jack stands, but for me, I'm taking the car up in the air. Once under the car, I'll begin my inspection by looking for leaks. If I look at this hose here from the transmission oil cooler, I don't see any wetness, but when I twist it at the fitting, I can see a certain amount of cracking. That's an indication these hoses are quite old and they should be replaced. Moving down the bottom of the pan, I'm picking up a slight amount of wetness, but it looks like it's coming from up above. And as we move back here towards the transmission, some of that same wetness is tracking down underneath the car. So I'm not too concerned about the oil around the bell housing and transmission pan. That's pretty normal, and I don't see any wetness or any prominent drips occurring. But when I move back up here to the front, I can look up high on the left side of the front of the engine and see quite a bit of wetness running down the side of the block. And I'm convinced that's coming from the power steering pump that we talked about earlier. Moving to the back of the car, I'm going to look for any signs of leaks in the fuel tank hoses. You have one outlet hose here on the right. That looks okay. And you have 2 return hoses that are coming back from the engine compartment. And those hoses and clamps look okay also. While here I'll inspect the axle boots. No signs of cracking or leaking, but if you look at the rear differential, there's quite a bit of wetness and oil at the bottom of the pumpkin here. You might think it's coming out of the bottom or out of the seal, but it's not. It's actually coming out of the half shaft seals on both the right and left side, and then leaking down to the bottom of the axle housing. This is something I'm going to have to discuss with the owner to decide whether we should replace these before his trip. While inspecting this rear end, I caught a problem out of the corner of my eye, and look at this. We have some cracking that's developing in this flex disc on the end of the drive shaft. This is a real problem, and that flex disc is going to have to be replaced. Be sure and check out my video on drive shaft inspection, including replacement of the front center bearing. Later on, I'll go up and check that bearing too, as well as the front flex disc. There's one other thing I just noticed, and that's these rubber exhaust hangers. We call these donuts. But look at that. You can see the cracking, and let me tell you, on a trip, you do not want these to break or your exhaust system will go dragging down the freeway on you. I was going to walk you through what I inspect when I check the rear axles and the rear suspension, but I realize I'm just repeating myself since I've already done a video on rear axles and suspension component inspection and repair. So I would ask that you go back and look at those videos to give you a better idea of what you should check before a trip. And finally, I'm going to take a look at this exhaust system. Once again, I'm looking for any signs of black soot. That's the first indication of a leak. This pipe center muffler looks okay. As I move back down the rear muffler, and sure enough, here on the back, I'm picking up signs of black carbon, and there's the leak right there. I'm going to wrap up my undercar inspection by looking at the brakes and the front suspension. Particularly the pad thickness. I'm checking calipers for leaks, rotors for excessive wear, and all the front suspension components for any looseness. If you're not familiar with these items, please check out my video, as I've already done a video on front suspension and brake system component inspection repair. And finally, there's two things you have to have when you're going on a road trip in a Mercedes-Benz. Number one, you must have a good hood star. And it must be straight, because the hood star is what leads you down the straight path. And secondly, you have to have a straight and true license plate to keep you out of trouble on your path. I usually finish up my pre-trip inspection with a thorough electrical check of the car's systems. That begins with the alternator and voltage regulator, and sure enough, I removed this regulator and look at the brushes. They're almost worn all the way down. So it's a good thing I caught this, or he might have had a charging problem on his trip. Now we'll go ahead and check all the light systems in the car. I'm going to go ahead and get in the car now and check the electrical components, including the heater blower motor and radio operation, glove box lights, dash lights, etc. And then go ahead and check all the lights on the car. You're going to need someone to probably help you do this. They can stand back and let you know whether all the lights, including the brake and turn signals and everything, are working. Turn the headlights on, hit high beam. Oops, look over there. We've got a right side high beam out, and we're going to go look in the back and see how the brake lights and turn signals are working in the rear. You can see I'm still working on my list here. I'll probably add one more thing: wiper blades. Those are inexpensive and should always be changed before you take off on a long trip. Larry just informed me he's leaving in 3 days. So I've got my work cut out for me. But one thing, I've already fixed the two most important things: the hood star and the license plate. We carry a number of these products on our website, along with complete instructions on how to fix it yourself. So be sure and check it out.